Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this session, this exclusive session where we have two great personalities, the men of the hour at Small Case, and we're really, really happy to have this conversation with Mr. Ajay Modi on behalf of Piper Serica. Ajay, please say hi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
And of course, one of the greatest personalities in the entrepreneurial space. And I'm not saying this to flatter, but this is true. And I think people who are following and who know Dixon Technologies would know this man. And welcome, Mr. Sunil Vachani, the chairman and founder of Dixon Technologies.
Thank you.
Say hi.
Thank you, Abid.
Yeah. So today's conversation will be about the entrepreneurship journey. So everybody talks about being an entrepreneur. Every kid's dream, every business student, every person has an entrepreneurship, mentality in their mind, where they want to put their ideas into work, their passion, they want to make it grow. And we are really glad on behalf of Piper Serica and Small Case, we are really glad to have you here. And today we'll be looking at the entrepreneurship journey, the blood, sweat, and tears that has been put into Dixon Technologies and what has made it come so far where it is and where it can grow. So thank you so much for coming in, both of you. And Ajay, I hand over the floor to you.
Thank you, Abel, for the opening sweet words. Without taking much time, I am lucky to have this pleasure to be talking to Sunil sir. I read, Sunilji, that you graduated from American College in London, right?
That's right. Yeah, American College of London. That's right.
Yeah. So and you came back to Delhi to work with your father in the Western TV, Western Electronics Group. So what was the brief genesis of your journey? The switch from London to Delhi, the switch from Western Electronics to giving birth to Dixon. If you could take us through that journey. I also read that you were 22 when you came up with this idea of starting on your own. That's a very young age to kind of be dreaming big and executing it right. It would be great if you can take us through the early journey of your life.
Sure. First of all, Ajay, thank you for the faith and trust that you've reposed on Dixon. And it is exactly this kind of trust and faith that we strive to aim for all stakeholders. So you talked about the journey starting from 1993. So, I came back from college from London, and I took training in my late father's company. And the first training was in a factory which was manufacturing electrolytic capacitors. And even that time, even now, though we don't have many company manufacturing components, but there were companies that time which were manufacturing the passive components, and this was one of the factories that I undertook training in. So it was a great experience. And as you know, my late father was a pioneer in the industry. He was the one who started, introduced, in fact, color TVs in 1983 during the Asian Games time. And also, he was extremely innovative in launching various new products for the first time in the country, whether it was VCR or video games, and many firsts were to his credit. So, he was really, very, very innovative, and he thought way ahead of his time. Now, when I came back, I was taking training in this factory, and I had the option of coming into the family business. Now, the situation as it was that my brothers were also in the same business. A lot of family members were in the same business. And I felt that I would not be able to contribute much being in that setup where one did not have full sort of, accountability and responsibility at the same time. So I told my late father that I want to start this venture. And to his credit, he trusted a 22-year-old at that time with his money. And also give full credit to him that he gave us the freedom. That time it was a relatively new concept of manufacturing products for others. I think those times, manufacturing was something that people believed should be done in-house, cannot be given out. It was the core of every brand or every company, and so obviously my father was a little concerned, and he asked me that, "Are you convinced about this idea?" I said, "Yes, I've seen that happen in the West, and I feel that's going to happen also coming into the India, and India probably emerging as a base for manufacturing." So this is how it started, and it started with, as I said, a small capital of a few lakh rupees. It was a rented factory, a small rented factory in Noida, a few people, and that's how we started.
Was there a pain point? I mean, when you thought of becoming a manufacturer to other brands, was there a pain point that you were trying to solve? Uh, why did you come up with this idea of saying that let me do this in India? Uh, what was the genesis? What was your thought process when you decided to do this?
Yes, and I think what we thought that time still holds true now. That companies should focus on their core strengths, and any company doing manufacturing and marketing, their branding, the distribution, and R&D. It would not the ideal way to do it then, and I don't think it's the ideal way to do it now. And I'll also talk about how we learned this the hard way in our journey when we tried to do both branding and manufacturing. So I think what holds true now was also true that time back, many years back.
So when you say you learned it the hard way, does that are you talking about Western TV brand that you tried to relaunch the brand again, right?
We did dabble. Yeah, that's right. We did dabble in branding, as I mentioned, many years back. And so I decided, I said, why not try and also, besides the manufacturing that we're doing, let's also look at branding for the same products that we're doing. But we quickly realized, and I'm very glad that we realized in time, that was not our core strength. That was not something that we should have been doing. They say that sometimes in life, the decisions of what not to do turn out to be more important than what to do. And I think this was one such decision that we took absolutely in the nick of time.
It was a 40 lakh rupee loan that you took from your late father, and from a 40 lakh rupee loan to a market cap of 25,000 odd crore today, it has been a long journey, right? What were the biggest challenges that you faced in this journey? Was there ever a day where you had to completely pivot your business model? Did you ever face? Did the business ever face extinction? Were there risks in the company? Did you try to de-risk the business model in any way?
Yeah. So, first of all, you talked about the numbers, and I think it's something that we're really proud of and extremely happy at what we've achieved. But I think the satisfaction more than the numbers is on the trust that we've generated with our customers. So something that we're really proud of and something that we really cherish, that right from the beginning of our journey, no customer has left us. Right. Because of a relationship issue. It could have, if the customer has exited a particular category, but they've never left us as a partner, which to me is the most satisfying part of the journey. So one of the brands that we really started with 30 years back with a product category like VCRs. Today, that brand, we are still associated, and we have a very, very big association with that brand for a completely different product category. But with that brand, we've done many products. We started with VCRs. We went on to color televisions, CRT color televisions for them. Then we started manufacturing their audio products, then their DVDs, then their CFL lighting. Then now, a large portion of their lighting business is done by us, manufactured by us. So I think that to me is extremely satisfying. So the second question as to what were the real challenges. So I think no doubt one of the biggest challenges was to convince the stakeholders and including the government that India could emerge as the destination for manufacturing electronic hardware, not only for the Indian market, but for the entire world. I remember during those days, and I'm talking many years back now, when we used to visit the government offices, the concerned ministries, the question that we were often asked that, our strength lies in software as a country. Do you really think hardware can happen? Do you really think we can compete with our neighboring countries or with the other countries who were dominant that time? And of course, the answer that time was a resounding yes. And till now, there's even more conviction that yes, it is happening and it will happen. India will become the hub for manufacturing for the world. So that was one of the biggest challenges, convincing all stakeholders. And this was something that, honestly, we even struggled with during our IPO, because I remember, during my road shows, it was very difficult to try and convince even potential investors and partners that, really this can happen. But now I'm very happy to see that after our what we have done and what we've been able to create in the recent past, a lot of people are believing in this story, and we see a lot of money also flowing into this industry and even to component industry, which is extremely positive, because it's very important that the whole ecosystem develops. So I think that's something to be very happy about.
What was the biggest, you had this journey where you started with one brand, one product, to literally scaling it up as I see today, and after your recent couple of announcements of doing JVs, venturing into from say manufacturing VCRs to DVDs to venturing into telecom components. So I see literally this as saying that we will manufacture everything electronics. Everything that is electronic, Dixon will one day manufacture. Having said that, in this journey, what was the biggest turning point for the company? What was that one day, that one moment when you felt that, oh, finally we have cracked it. Finally, now we're heading.
So Ajay, answering your first point that we get into almost everything, I think it's not like that. There is some method to the madness. So I'm often asked that what is really Dixon? Are you really a manufacturing company? Are you a design company? Are you a services company? What are you? So my answer is that we consider ourselves as an extension of our customer, right? We see the pain points of the customers. We see how we can add value for our customer, and that's how we make our decisions. Of course, any decision that we make needs to fit into our core values and the core that we have for the company. And just to quickly answer, because I think that's something that a lot of investors have also asked me, and I think some of the people today also would be keen to know that how do we really evaluate getting into a particular product category when a customer wants it. So I think there are a few boxes that have to be ticked. One, the product that we get into has to be highly scalable, right? There needs to be a large mass for it. Two, there should be scope for backward integration. Three, there should be a scope for also designing that product in some time to come. It should not be something that we cannot design ourselves. We cannot be looking at just pure EMS play for a long, long time for a particular product. It has to get into ODM mode over a period of time. Fourth, can we look at becoming global leaders in that product in the long run? So these are some of the products, these are some of the boxes that we need to check. And of course, also looking at it that, what is that fit into our core strength, right? So these are the boxes that we check before getting into a product category.
The biggest journey is going from OEM to ODM. But when you say design, the one thing that I am a little perplexed about is the designing skills and the resources that are required for the cutting edge products that are designed internationally. For example, in countries like Korea, Samsung's products are some of the best designed products, or Apple's products are some of the best possible designs that we've ever seen. So, do you think as a country we have talent, design skills that can match the global requirement, ever changing design ecosystem? If not, would you want to set up design hubs in some other countries? What is your real thought about this design?
See, when you talk about designing of a product, to me, design is about three things besides many others. Primarily, one is the aesthetic part of it. Second is, let's say, the hardware design. When we're talking about the PCB layout and design and other things. And third is the software, right, which goes on to the product, and also the matching of the software and the hardware. I think in all three areas, India has a huge strength, right? It's just harnessing the right talent, getting the right talent, and making sure that people perform, up to the talent that they have. So it's all about that, and I feel that India definitely has a strength. We have brilliant engineers, hardware engineers, software engineers, and I think one doesn't need to talk about that strength. It's just a question of putting it together, right? And I think in Dixon we have shown that whenever there was a need for a particular product, there was a need for a disruption to innovation to happen, we have been there and up to the mark, right? So I give you an example, let's say starting with the lighting category. I remember when LED lighting was first being introduced, there was a program of EESL, right, Ujala program, wherein millions of LED bulbs were to be distributed in the smallest of towns of the country. And there was a global tender which was floated that time. And I remember that time also the LED bulb price was something like 270 rupees. And Dixon that time, partnering with our customers, we were able to crack that, right? We won that global tender, and we ended up supplying very cost-effective and frugal solutions and supplying millions of bulbs under that program. And similar stories are there across product categories, whether it is washing machine now. In fact, in that category, in the semi-automatic category, Dixon has already shown that we have the largest range of models as far as the category is concerned, designed completely by our team. Even in this fully automatic category, the product is completely designed by us, of course, with the help of our customers and our partners. But I think Dixon has proven that with the inputs from our customers and help from them, one can design very, very innovative products, not only for the Indian markets but for the global markets. And I think now going forward, similar execution, similar strategy has to be there for other product categories as they reach a higher level of maturity, whether it is mobile phones or cameras and security systems category that we are in. Going forward, even the telecom products like modems and routers, and even other categories like televisions in times to come.
Look, there is ample of resource available. India is a talent hub of all these. How do you recruit? What is your hiring practice across the organization, an organization of almost 14,000 people, including factory workers? What is your hiring process, training process, compensation process, career planning? Because these are the key tenets of building a long-term organization, right? These are some of the most important pieces that any organization needs to get right, and history has it the organizations which have done it right have able to get to where their vision was. Yeah. So what is it?
So I think something again that we're really proud of. If you see our company, the employee turnover ratio is very, very low, right? It's even at the I'm talking about the middle level, of course, at the senior level also. If you see, meet our heads of divisions, right? There are our family members who have been with us. Some have been with us right from inception. Some have been with us for as long as now, almost 15, 20 years. So that's something that we are extremely proud of. And Ajay, from a very, very early stage in the company, we believed, and which we still believe now, that employees are our family, part of the family, right? And how do you treat a family, right? And I know there's a lot of debate around that are really employees part of your family? I am on the side of this thing that yes, they are like my family. And what really happens in a family? Well, in a family, they're all, all are stakeholders, right? So from very early days, and there's also great transparency within the family. Early days in the company, I remember when we were very small, we used to share our numbers, our financials with everybody. It was open this thing out. Because I said that unless people are involved, right, in what is going on, how will they really be committed to it? I know a lot of people used to tell me, because that time we were very small, and our competitors were to talk to, they said, your company is so porous, every information is out. I said, that's fine. It's a small price to pay, because people have to know what's going on in the company. That's how they'll buy it. How do you, people ask me that, how do you say that, okay, people are being treated like family? So I said, your actions really define that, right? Are you being fair to them? Are you looking after them? Are you there for them when they need you most? So it's basically, you cannot pinpoint it, but these are your all smallest of actions will give that feeling to your family and to your employees that are you treating them like family, right? Third, as I said, that from a very, very early days, our employees are our stakeholders, right? Even when we were not listed, there was no private equity, we were a very, very small company. I remember a lot of our senior people were given shares. I mean, all they were getting was dividends. There was no even, scope that time for listing. But the idea was that, that's what we believed in. That was our philosophy. So these are the actions that really, define you and what is your values or culture in the company. Then coming, of course, there is a huge formal process, right? From, we call it recruitment to retirement. There are software tools. There are processes which are built into every stage. And of course, there is one process, and there is also the human link, the relationship, which no process can replace. So it's a combination of that.
Recruitment to retirement. That's a very, very interesting. Can you throw a little more light on this?
Well, right from starting recruitment, when you're recruiting a person, what are the processes? I'm talking about the more process side now. That what are the processes that you put into place? Making sure that the people who are coming in, I never say there's a right, wrong. There's a person who's, good or not good. There's someone who has to fit into your culture, fit into your values, relate to your values. So through that process of recruitment, we try to suss out, or we try to see that person who's coming in, is he fitted into the culture? Can he relate to that? What are the values of the company, right? So there is a formal process to it. And then, of course, once the person is taken on board, the interview process, how do you really try and in that very little time that you have with the potential candidate, how do you really get to know his inner self, right? And of course, then, the induction process, the training, getting him to know the values of the company is very important, that there's a big communication at that stage so that he understands what the company stands for. So, like I said, for every stage from recruitment to retirement, there are certain processes defined which are followed. And also then at the end of it, there is that human link, that human interface, which is more important also.
I hope your employees are listening to this and they'll be very proud of the way you have planned it. What is that one value that you and Dixon as a company has stuck to from day one, and you are very sure that you will never want to compromise on that one value?
So one value, if you ask me just one, I would say that not to compete with the customer. And as I said, something that we learned the hard way, right? We will never, compete with our customers going forward. We would not launch our own brand. That's something that is, completely cast in stone. And a lot of people have said that potential investors, when we were on the road shows for IPO, that why don't you look at your own brand? And we said, no, this is what we are. And this is what our story is. And this is what we believe in. So that's something, like I said, to cast in stone, that we would not compete with our own brands, so with our customers.
That gives me a lot of assurance. Thank you.
Yeah.
Again, Dixon is the largest electronic manufacturer in most of the categories that you are in, and you're growing. And the growth rate is something that I wouldn't really want to put a number to. But for this kind of scale, and as you said, going from OEM to ODM, from just manufacturing to becoming a design partner, how do you innovate? I mean, how do you innovate at factory level? How do you innovate at delivery level? How do you innovate at people level? I read somewhere the concept of my machine that you've introduced in the factory level. If you can talk more about that part.
So you see, innovation has to happen at many levels, right? And I think that's something that evolves over a period of time, and it happens. One with this thing from outside that comes in, and one there is a learning inside. So what we try and do is that we have many factories, and what we try and do is that members from different factories engage with each other in an official forum on a regular basis to share best practices, right? That because each factory is learning from a different customer, each factory is got access to some knowledge that they've acquired, whether through the discussion with customer or from outside or from within, right? So it's very important that you share the best practices. Also, secondly, it's extremely important, the regular training of our employees, right? To see that, what is going on in the industry. So whether it's thing like the Industry 4.0, the latest MES systems. So it's very important that your employees are engaged with the outside world continuously to be abreast with what's going on. So like I said, learning is happening from both in-house as well as outside. And that's how innovation also comes in. And I think the biggest innovations, always come in, one, when you have a culture of openness and also listening to the voices, right? So I think candor is extremely important in a company, right? When there is a culture where people are allowed to speak and discuss with their subordinates and the bosses, I think that's where really the culture of innovation comes in. To start, to name a few things, right? So that's extremely important, where you provide that environment to people to talk openly and to discuss openly, right? Second important thing is, as I said, listening, right? A lot of times we make the mistake that we are maybe hearing our customers, or hearing our employees, or hearing our family members, are not really listening to them. So it's very important that we listen to them and factor in, as to see what they're saying, what are the pain points, what is something that they would like us to work upon. So these are some of the things that, how we try and promote the culture of continuous improvement, so to say.
You set up factories in tax-free zones. I also happened to read somewhere that to bring down the cost, you kind of got used or less used machinery instead of buying brand new stuff, which again reduces cost. And this again, media quoted your words that to be truly what you want to be, you have to be the lowest cost producer. I think at your scale, you're already the lowest cost producer. But again, I want you to delve a little deeper on the factory, the way you build factories. How do you identify the locations? How do you manage people there? And how do you let workers take ownership of what they are doing, what they are building as a product?
Yeah, so I think, all these decisions, Ajay, are taken into account of, again, what the customer expects from us, right? As I said, we are an extension of our customer. So just to give you an example, of the agility and flexibility and nimbleness of Dixon. I remember many years back, because customer always expects that, look, you got to be more efficient, you got to be extremely cost effective, you got to be frugal, and really have the best cost structure, right? And you talked about the the tax-free zones. Well, the customer expects this from you, besides other things, that you should be aware of what's going on, what are the schemes in the country, and to take best advantage in a completely legal way of all the schemes that are there. So I remember that there was a scheme launched many years back of an excise-free zone in Jammu and Kashmir region. That was the first excise-free zone, I think, that came up, right? One of the first zones. And in a very short period of time, for one of our leading customers, we were able to set up the factory in a record period of time and pass on the complete benefits of the excise-free zone. And that's how the investments came up in the excise-free zone, then in Uttaranchal also. Right. So this is something that the customer expects from us. This is the least that they expect from us. Second is, we also see that where if we set up a factory, we can provide the best advantage to our customers. So like for our TV factory, we went to Tirupati, right? Which we wanted a factory which was very close to the port because the import content was high. Right. And we wanted as less a transit time because the working capital also gets reduced if the transit time gets reduced. So we set up a factory near the port. And also, we didn't set it up in Chennai because we felt the cost structures in Chennai were very high. We went to Tirupati, which was a territory which was not explored. We were one of the first ones out there. So obviously, when you do that, the cost structures are much lower, right? So that's how we locate our plants and we take our decisions, keeping completely the customer's interest in mind.
What do you do differently from your competitors? What is it that is different in Dixon compared to all other players in the segment?
So, I feel it's not just one particular thing that makes you stand out, right? It's a combination of factors, right? Now, just to give an example, okay, let's say in the case of Apple, what's that core system strength that really endears the customer? Is it the user interface? Is it the sleek design of the products? Is it that huge experience of retail? Is it the convenience, reliability? So I think it's a mix of all, right? So in our case, if you look at it, it's a mix of many things coming together. And to name a few, I would say our agility, our nimbleness, our flexibility, our frugal cost structures, our unique business model, right? Wherein you have across product categories. I think if you see globally also, I feel very few companies have developed this strength across product categories. There'll be a company which will be extremely large in, let's say, one particular category, like let's say washing machines, or there's a company which is extremely this thing in lighting, right? It's huge in lighting. So I think what Dixon has been able to do, that across product categories, we've been able to build that leadership position, right? Which is also a very unique model, even if you look at from the global perspective and the Indian perspective. So I think it's a lot of these factors coming together, right? Our design capabilities, our backward integration. So all these factors put in together, I think, puts us in a unique position. And idea is that we keep working on these points so that we really try and create a sustainable competitive advantage. Right? We have been able to create a competitive advantage, but the whole issue is now how this can be sustainable going forward and in the long run. And that's something that I think we keep on working on, and I think that we keep on, we as an organization, as a team, we have to keep focusing upon that particular thing.
And you took a lot of examples. To understand this, does Dixon, do we benchmark ourselves against global peers? And if we do, what has been your learning from benchmarking yourself with manufacturers in China, manufacturers in other Asian countries, actually in China? Because to my knowledge, I think some of the best manufacturers, some of the largest scale manufacturers are in China. So what has been your learning benchmarking yourself with a lot of the global peers?
Ajay, first of all, benchmarking is good. There's no doubt. But I think benchmark will only take you so far, right?
Yeah.
Benchmarking will make you maybe a clone of someone, And we don't want to do that. Benchmarking, like I said, is important to know where you stand in some of the parameters, let's say like productivity, quality, field failures, your cost structures, your units per hour. There are many things that you can benchmark. But at the end of the day, you need to be, have your own unique culture, as an own unique organization. And, I was asked, and I get asked many times that, are you the Foxconn, the next Foxconn of India? So I tell them very humbly that, we want to be known as the Dixon from India. We don't want to be known as the Foxconn from India. We want to be known as the Dixon from India. And when that happens, that means people will recognize Dixon and people will recognize India as a brand, that yes, India is an hardware destination. So I think we have to create that unique identity, unique culture, unique positioning, and that's what is important.
But you would still be taking learnings from some, not say exactly same peers, maybe not manufacturers, but say someone like an Apple, someone like a Samsung, probably someone like a Tesla.
Yeah, of course. You see, you need to pick up, the things that you feel that, yes, this is something that I can definitely improve upon. And I think that's happening on a day in, day out basis. Like I told you, we learn so much from our customers, because each customer brings its own strength, unique strengths to the table, and something that you can really learn a lot from them. And I think this is something that our team has been very, very good at, that we are very humble. We are, we believe that, yes, there's always more to learn as a culture. We never believe, that this is it. We are the best. We don't need to this thing. There's something that Atul also keeps harping upon, that to our team members, that you got to be learning every day, learning from your customers, learning every day from them. So that's what is important.
How ruthless are you with your competitors, and how solid are you with your customers?
So, we are, I would say, in terms of scale of ruthlessness, I would say we are one. We are not ruthless at all, because we believe it's not a zero-sum game, right? That whatever we do, if we try and let's just scuttle someone's chances, or we try and block someone, it's a very, very temporary thing. It's a very short-term measure, because ultimately you cannot stop competition coming in. And even if you try to do it, you'll just be a loser, because you're focusing on something that is not going to build a sustainable competitive advantage. You're focusing on the wrong thing, I would say, if one is actually looking at it. So, as I said, we have to try and build our own strength day in, day out, and ensure that, that strength that we build, it becomes sustainable, that it creates a moat around the business. I think it's pointless looking back when you're running a race as to how far that person is, or where is he catching up or not. Yes, you should do that, but that cannot become the full focus of the company. Right? So I would say we're not really ruthless as such, but yes, we are extremely focused on what's going on, what's the environment like. And I think it's very important to be aware and conscious as to what needs to be done. Right. And I think that's half the battle won, if you're really aware of what needs to be done to really stay ahead of the game. Sometimes that becomes the biggest problem, that you're not aware of what really is required to be done.
I have a different perspective now. So, but
sure. Let me hear that.
No, I always thought that leaders, companies which are leaders, are some of the most ruthless players in the industry. I wouldn't want ruthless to sound like a negative word at all, but they are the ones who kind of use their muscle power, their scale, to create a real barrier or a very tough day for a competitor. But now,
so let me ask you, how do you see Apple doing that? How have they been ruthless? Maybe I missed seeing something there. I'm just taking the example.
Yeah, so to the best of my understanding, Apple, I would call it Apple the design mafia. I mean, they have really been ruthless in terms of getting the best design, not just the physical, the hardware aspect of it, but even the software. iOS, I think, comes to be probably the best of and the most beautiful of the OSs that we have ever used. Again, my perspective.
But is that being ruthless, or is it building a moat around your business? Because maybe when you said ruthless, I understood something else, that you're trying to scuttle your competition. And you see, that's not ruthlessness.
Well, yeah.
To me, I think maybe we have a different views of the word ruthlessness?
Could be. I will want to understand my thought of being ruthless more. But also, when I say ruthless, let me give you another example of an Indian company. The likes of the FMCG companies, HUL being one of them, probably the most ruthless players in when it comes to distribution. I mean, they are people who command the shelf. They'll literally go to an extent to tell a grocery store or even a large format chain that, look, if you're not keeping this product here, I'm not giving you my products. Or if you're keeping competitors' products ahead of me, I am not giving you my products. I mean, that probably they define the word ruthless for me. I would call that.
Okay. So, Ajay, my point is, every company, and like I said, that when we also look at it, we'll try and build such a scale that it's possible for someone to really reach that level, to build the design capabilities, to have that low cost structure. So every day one is trying to do that. I don't think that is a definition of, according to me, ruthlessness. But anyway, that's something that we can have a debate on one of these days.
Yeah, not debate. I think I will learn more about my thought there, my question there. I will maybe rebuild that question completely.
Sure. And I'll also try and reflect on what you said on whether that's really required in business.
But thank you for giving me a different perspective.
Sure.
I mean, you have a very marquee board, but is there a gap in your board that you ever felt, or is there some talent gap that you would like to bridge in your board? Or to add a little bit of trivia to it, if you were to get one global celebrity on your board, who would that be?
If I were to get someone on my board right now, I think there'd be two people. So first of all, you said that let me answer the first question, right? That what do I feel that, which are the areas that we really need to, let's say, build on further? So I think two areas that come to mind. That one is, if we have to go global with our products. Right now, our most of our sales is in the domestic market. And that's something that we aspire to, as I said, to become, is to be a global leader in the top 10 times to come. And for that to happen, we really need to be exporting at least, let's say, 20 to 30% or 40% or even more of our total production. So if that has to happen, I think we have to really focus on our processes, our systems in multiple areas, and also focus on the design part of it. Right, that's something that definitely across product categories that we'll have to invest in, and we will continue to do that. So these are the two areas I feel that we need to invest in more, besides other things. Someone who I would have on my board right now, I would say, why look global? I would say maybe within India, two people. I would say Mr. Azim Premji and Rajiv Bajaj, and I'll tell you why. Because I think when I look at Bajaj Auto, to me, what they've done very successfully, which we would also like to do, is that they have gone global. Besides having domestic leadership, they have global leadership, and this is something that we are wanting to do. So I would love to maybe have have him and have his views that how he did it, and what we are focusing on, is it in the right direction to do that. Second, I would say why Mr. Azim Premji, that again, he has built a company which is now known globally, right? For not only the revenues and profits, but also in terms of, let's say, their softer side of it, right? Their, the transparency, the honesty, the way that they run the company, the openness. That's something that we connect with really well. So I think these are the two gentlemen who probably I would like to have someone on the board.
I mean, what goes into how do you build a board? Who chooses the board members? How active is the board?
I think. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
No, the question. Please go ahead.
To me, I think a board is an extremely important part of your organization, and I think how, let's say, a board really should operate in terms of how would, let's say, a board I would call an effective board. I think a board which is really guiding the management, and saying that, okay, that look, this is what we agreed to set out to be, and are you on the right path? Basically showing the mirror to the management that these are the values that we shared, values that we agreed upon. This is the path that we agreed upon. This is the objectives that we agreed upon. And just to really, brainstorm and guide the management that are we on the path, or have we gone, or have we strayed from the path ever? Because this also happens sometimes that unknowingly you kind of stray from your own path that you set out to yourself. So I think board is that sounding board, or that mirror that is shown to you at regular intervals. I think it's extremely important that the board members have the shared values, right? They believe in the values that you have as a company, right? Only then I think the board can be effective. So I think we are extremely fortunate to have a board and board members who have the same values, who keep guiding us. And I think the guidance has been invaluable, and also giving us the inputs, right? And board also, if you think about it, is also the medium which also connects the outside to the inside, right? Right. There are very few people in the company who are actually connect the dots from outside to the inside. And I think board brings that perspective. So this is how I feel the role is of the board. And I think we are very lucky to have board members who give us all sorts of perspectives, whether it's in terms of technology, whether in terms of corporate governance, in terms of HR practices, best practices. So we really get a huge lot of inputs from our board members.
I mean, while we have talked a lot about Dixon, I will want a little bit of your understanding, picking your brains here on the PLI ecosystem also. I think Dixon PLI resonates and connects very closely with at least electronic manufacturing, and as I see it is kind of being rolled out to a lot of other product and service manufacturers as well. What I want to understand and try to get flavor from you is that, is this enough? Is it something that will give the long-term competitive level playing field to India as a manufacturer after, say, PLI changes shape, goes away, or still stays but in a different form and fashion after 5 years? How do you look at this journey? How do you look at the incentive structure for a long-term 15-year journey ahead?
See, to me, PLI is a game changer. And I say that because I think it ticks all the boxes, what the country needs, right? If we have to really become the next hub for global manufacturing. One, it brings in the scale, because the whole concept is on, turnover in terms of compared to your base turnover, right? The additional turnover that you have as compared to your base year turnover. So this brings in the required scale. It also brings in the backward integration, because not only the finished products are incentivized, but the entire component chain also is incentivized. So if you see the new PLIs like air conditioning and LED lighting, for which we are also participating, the huge focus is on building a component ecosystem, right? We cannot be a manufacturing powerhouse if we don't have a component ecosystem. So one, it's building scale. Two, it's building a component ecosystem. Three, it's helping us address the global markets, right? Fourth, it's also bringing in large supply chains from the world into India, right? Now, we just read the article today as to how a few of the Apple component suppliers have added huge number of jobs in the country. Now, we ourselves are looking at adding huge number of jobs through the PLI route. We have participated already in the mobile PLI. We're looking at the IT hardware. We're looking at telecom. We're looking at the wearables and hearables, the air conditioner in terms of the the control boxes, and also the LED light. So we ourselves are looking at adding huge number of jobs. Few factories have already been set up at a global scale. Few more factories are coming up. Now, the whole point is how Indian companies can utilize the next 5 years to get that strength to compete in the global markets without any subsidies, right? And I'm sure that will happen, because as I mentioned, you are adding that scale, you are backward integrating, you are putting money into design across product categories. And if you're doing that, then you can compete in the global markets without any incentive. Because you see, what's also appreciate, the PLI is also compensating the manufacturers for certain disabilities that we have in the system. What are those disabilities? Logistics cost, power cost, land acquisition. All these things are being worked upon. And we are confident that besides the private sector working on correcting their weaknesses, right, those disabilities are also being corrected by the government. So the whole idea is that how government and industry can work together to ensure that after 5 years, you do not need PLI to be globally competitive.
You're very confident that if PLI after 5 years, if you don't have any subsidies, incentives, you would still be able to compete, grow at the same pace, or will. What I'm trying to understand is that
no, Ajay. So yeah, this thing you see is I feel that I'm 100% confident that once the 5 years are over, we will be global leaders and India will be the next hub. I'll tell you why. Just look at the example of mobile manufacturing PLI. Today, the exports is negligible. It's hardly a few $1 billion, right? What I think, if I'm not mistaken, about $4 to $5 billion is the total exports out of this segment. What we are expecting, the exports can reach $100 billion in the next 5 years. You can imagine what sort of scale it will bring, what sort of strength it will bring to the country. Now, I'm not just saying these numbers at the top of my head, because if you look at Vietnam, which is much smaller, does not have a component ecosystem of its own. Only maybe strength was, besides this thing of the low manpower cost and other things. But Vietnam today exports $90 billion worth of ICT products. So that can give you an idea. And our ICT exports are hardly about $12 billion, right? So just one category, what it can do to change the whole landscape of the country. And this is just one product. The similar stories are there in lighting and other product categories. So I'm very confident that this can take us really places, not only as a company, but as a country.
Correct to say that manufacturing, electronic manufacturing, or let me call it Atmanirbhar Bharat, electronic manufacturing, I think is one of the very core tenets of, if I were to call it Atmanirbhar Bharat. Would you be confident, or would I be right to say that this industry will grow and take the same shape as happened to Indian IT services?
Well, absolutely. We call this the Y2K movement for the Indian hardware industry, right? And I feel that what strength the software industry has built, and I think you can mark my words, in the next 5 to 7 years, hardware industry will be right up there in terms of the global dominance. That when someone would look at outsourcing, they would think India rather than some other country. When people would trust the Indian companies to deliver quality products, deliver reliable products, and on time, and the most cost-effective products, right? And that's when we will really achieve our vision of saying that yes, India is the next hub for manufacturing of these products.
So, which means we will manufacture for our own and export as well, or this is predominantly going to be our own, because our own demand of electronics remains very, very, very huge, right?
Yeah, you see, so, numbers have already been discussed that, the total demand is roughly about $140 billion, right, of ICT products, out of which roughly about $70 billion of manufacturing is happening. But out of that 70 billion, a lot of the components are still imported, right? So the first step is important, that 70 billion goes to, let's say, 120 billion of manufacturing, first level of manufacturing in the country. And over the 120 billion, entire parts are manufactured. And then, of course, look at the global markets, right? That, why today India has that strength. As I said, we have the low labor cost advantage. We have large schools of labor, unlike other countries. We had a trained manpower. We have the government policies which are in place now. So we have everything going for us. The huge tailwinds in this industry.
And please don't mind if I sound like an HR-ish question, but
Sure.
Where do you see Dixon 5 years down the line? I mean, this is not going to be a forward guidance, please.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, Ajay, a lot of people ask me that what is really your vision in terms of, let's say today we've done 7,000, 6,000 crores. Next year we're planning, let's say, 14,000 crores. 5 years, what will be the turnover of the company? I said, fine, we have number crunching is all right. And we have the numbers with us. We can, we share those numbers, and those numbers are there. That's not a problem. But I think you have to look beyond the numbers. And I think that's what I keep telling my team, that, our vision cannot be just in numbers, that in 5 years, let's say we have to do 1 lakh crores. Why? Our vision is that, as I said, we need to be the most trusted company, trusted brand, the brand behind brands in the world. Whenever someone looks at outsourcing, someone thinks of Dixon. Whenever someone looks at outsourcing, they think of India. If that happens, sky is the limit. Why $100 billion? You could be looking at $300, $400 billion exports just in our category itself. And Dixon could be, let's say, 15% of it, right? So if I tell you that in terms of numbers, obviously it'll sound outlandish. But the point is, once you get the trust of the customer, right, there is no stopping you.
You've given me a lot of content to kind of digest because I thought, now I feel that my thinking was small. Now I have the bigger picture. I am lucky to have the bigger picture. If Dixon was to be one celebrity, Indian, global, whoever it is, who would that be and why? Which is that one
I would
celebrity
feel
Dixon closely
Warren
connects?
Buffett. I think Warren Buffett.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'll tell you why. Because someone who's extremely numbers focused, and I think as an internal team, our team is really focused on this thing, on making sure that, as I mentioned, the cost effectiveness, the other things. Two, I think what we see in Mr. Warren Buffett, that even though his with his age, he keeps getting sharper, right? The focus keeps getting sharper, and I think that's something that we've seen, at least in the company's context, that as the companies get older, the sharpness quotient comes down, right? The nimbleness quotient comes down, right? You start operating as a large company. This is something that I think we would love to do, that even when we are, let's say, 30 years have passed, and in the times to come, we need to be as agile, nimble-footed, and focused as we were, let's say, when we just started. And of course, the humility, the nature of being frugal, not being outlandish, or in terms of being all over there. So I think these are some of the values that I think we relate to.
Interesting. Actually, that was supposed to be the last question, but I have one more. My personal question, not from anyone
Sure.
else. Initiation of an order for a new category, a new customer. Every time you talk about a category, you get a very large, a very marquee name as your anchor customer. For every category, you are able to get the best of the lot as your anchor customer. What is the secret? What is that one secret that you're able to get an anchor so easily, and so many anchors?
We are extremely fortunate, and I think, as I mentioned, and this is something that we strive for, it again translates to that trust, right? I think over a period of time, once you are transparent with your customers, once you are open, once you have that relationship, deep relationship, I think that word travels. And we're extremely fortunate to have, positive reviews, positive comments, positive feedback from our existing customers, which gives that confidence to new customers coming in. right? Because everybody looks around the industry and sees what's going on. And I hope that's something that we can really work on in times to come and strengthen in times to come, of getting more and more customers believing in us and trusting us. That's the vision of the company.
That is very exciting. So I mean, that is a lot for me to already take back, digest, relook upon. I am sure it is going to be a lot of information for our audience as well. I would like to conclude this conversation here. I mean, I wish I could extend it to 1 more hour, but I
thank you. Thank you, Ajay, for having me here, and thank you, Abel.
And I would like to thank you and wish you and your team all the best. I hope to see more successes. We look forward to hosting you again for
thank you
talking about this again. And I am taking this opportunity on behalf of the entire investor community to give us one multi-bagger to help us grow our wealth, to help us generate that alpha. I have an astounding trust and faith, and I keep telling my investors, and I was just telling Abel as well, that out of everything that I have seen in so many companies, the one thing that I see in Dixon is that we are extremely, extremely transparent. I respect that transparency. I respect your and your team's hard work. I'm very thankful for you to have taken this opportunity, time to talk to us.
Thank you.
I look forward to this again.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Abel. Thank you, Ajay.
Where they see themselves going forward, in what basis they want to see themselves be seen as, how they want to treat their clients and not be a competitor in the future. A lot of input. I know it's like how you said, it's a lot of content to digest. So tell me, what was your takeaways from the talk with and what insights have you gotten into?
So it was a very exciting conversation. I mean, there is so much that I will have to look upon, especially my thought of what ruthless really means. But there was so much to take back, because all this while we as managers, we spend a lot of time focusing on numbers. Even investors, not just managers, as a community, we are used to focusing a lot on numbers. And at the end of the day, numbers will drive everything. But the passion and the transparency and the culture that the culture of as we say in Hindi, customer Bhagwan hai. The culture of being the best manufacturer for the customer, I think that is something that resonates a lot with me. For context, our strategy is to back the largest players in each of the industries. Now, Dixon, I am very happy to say that Dixon is not just the largest player in one, but in a lot of categories. Dixon is the largest manufacturer of electric bulbs. Dixon is the largest manufacturer of TV. I think Dixon will become the largest manufacturer of audio accessories very soon. So, I mean, it has been a great journey as an investor. Dixon is the largest allocation in 2 of our strategies on small case. Let me and if you see here, our strategy ED Plus, which is a mid cap and small cap strategy, has generated a return of almost 99%. You can say 100% in just about little over 8 months. It is really the effort of companies like Dixon that really shapes up this return. I think. I mean, there is one very interesting. So if you look at the chart here, I have just tried to plot Nifty against Dixon, and you see Dixon going from 100 to almost 800 in a matter of about 3 years. I don't have too many words to put here. I think Mr. Vachani and his insights were really what has driven the stock from where to where it is. But I would like to thank all the viewers. Over to you.
So thanks. I mean, I think the graph speaks for itself. The performance speaks for itself. Just Vachani also spoke for himself and Dixon Technologies. And we're really glad that Piper Serica and Dixon could come together to share information on what are the bare bones of creating a business from scratch, what that journey is like, and what we can learn from it, and what builds a great company and the future of India itself based on these things. And it's a very proud moment for people all over the country to realize what they've got on their hands and what they've built together. And we're really happy that they're also part of our small case, and that is through Piper Serica. So thank you, Piper Serica, for a small case that actually pulls together such a strong fundamental based on ideas, and it's a great portfolio as well. And so thank you so much for also taking the time to actually bringing Johnny and having a talk and being very informative. Also for a lot of young investors and young entrepreneurs who want to see themselves, grow and build the country along with it. And I think that is something that we have to be really appreciative about, and something that you can really be proud of. Piper Serica can really be proud of, and Small Case is also proud of having that on board. So thank you so much. It really means a lot. Thank you, viewers. You can also check Piper Serica Small Cases in the description below. Feel free to subscribe and share this video with everyone that you know and people who want to learn.